The day the old woman's hands began to tremble as she stirred a pot of thin lentils on a broken roadside stove, the world had already forgotten her name, but fate had not. Dust clung to her faded shawl, traffic roared past her tiny shack without slowing, and hunger stared at her from 3 pairs of sunken eyes standing just a few steps away. She did not know it then, but the kindness she was about to show on that ordinary, cruel afternoon would one day bring 3 roaring engines back to this very spot, stopping the world in its tracks. Before the story goes any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of good deeds, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel Acts That Matter. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that still believe humanity can be beautiful. Her name was Shanti, though almost no one called her that anymore. To the neighborhood, she was just the old woman with the little food stall at the corner of the cracked road, selling cheap flatbreads and watery curry to daily wage workers. She had once lived a full life, with a husband who drove a bus and a small home filled with laughter. But years had a way of stripping everything away. Her husband died suddenly, her sons moved to the city and never returned, and the house was lost to debts she never fully understood. What remained was this tiny shack made of rusted tin and plywood, a stove held together by wire, and a heart that refused to harden no matter how much the world took from her. Every morning before sunrise, Shanti would wake with aching knees, wash her face with cold water, and begin cooking. She counted lentils like coins, measured flour carefully, and prayed the day would bring enough customers to buy her food so she could eat something herself by night. Some days were kind. Most were not. Still, she showed up, because survival had taught her that dignity often lived in persistence. It was on one of the worst days, when barely anyone stopped by her stall, that she noticed the boys. They were triplets, though she didn't know that at first. They looked about 10 years old, thin as reeds, their clothes torn and mismatched. They hovered nearby, pretending to be interested in the road, but their eyes never left the pot. Hunger made them restless, and fear made them quiet. Shanti had seen hunger before. She had worn it herself like a second skin. She knew that looked too well to ignore it. She watched them for a long moment, her own stomach tightening. She knew exactly how much food she had left. She knew if she gave some away, she might go to bed hungry. The world would not punish her for turning them away, it never punished anyone for cruelty. But something in her chest ached harder than hunger. Slowly, she scooped lentils into 3 chipped bowls, tore flatbreads into halves, and placed the food on the edge of her stall. The boys froze, unsure if this was real. When they finally approached, they ate like children who had learned not to trust generosity. They ate quickly, silently, eyes darting around as if someone might snatch the food away. Shanti stood there, pretending to clean, pretending not to watch, though every swallow they took eased something deep inside her. When they finished, she pressed a small packet of leftover bread into their hands and gestured for them to go before anyone could object. They did not say thank you. Hunger does not always allow manners. But before leaving, all 3 turned back and looked at her, really looked at her, as if trying to memorize her face. The days turned into weeks, and the boys came back whenever they could. Sometimes Shanti fed them. Sometimes she could not. On those days, she would give them water and a place to sit, shielding them from the sun with her own thin body. She learned they had no parents, no home, only each other. She never asked how they survived. Some truths are too heavy for old hearts. What mattered was that for a little while, they were not alone. Then, one day, they stopped coming. Shanti waited for them for weeks, glancing up whenever footsteps approached, saving scraps just in case. Months passed. The city changed around her. New shops opened. Old ones closed. Her hair grew whiter, her back bent further, and life returned to its quiet cruelty. Sometimes, when the nights were especially cold, she wondered if the boys were alive. She whispered prayers into the dark, not expecting answers. Years passed like that. Time carved lines into her face and stole strength from her hands. Her stall grew smaller, her earnings thinner. On some days, she barely sold anything at all. Yet she kept going, because stopping would mean admitting the world had finally beaten her. Then came the afternoon that would rewrite everything. It began with a sound southwest out of place. It felt unreal. A low, powerful growl echoed down the road, followed by another, then another. Heads turned. Conversations stopped. 3 sleek Lamborghinis rolled into view, their paint gleaming under the dusty sun like something torn from another world. They moved slowly, deliberately, and then they stopped, right in front of Shanti's little stall. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. Luxury cars did not belong here. People gathered, whispering, phones raised. The engines fell silent, leaving a strange hush behind. The doors opened, and 3 young men stepped out. They were tall, well-dressed, confident, their presence commanding attention without effort. They looked powerful, successful, untouchable. And then they looked at her. Shanti's heart began to pound. She did not know why her hands were shaking, only that something felt heavy and important. The men walked toward her, past the pots and cracked bowls, past the curious crowd. One of them reached out gently and steadied her trembling hands. Another wiped dust from the edge of her stall. The third looked at her face with eyes that shimmered with something dangerously close to tears. In that instant, recognition struck her like a wave. The shape of their eyes. The familiar stillness in the way they stood together. Her breath caught, and the world blurred. The boys she had fed with trembling hands were standing before her as men who had conquered the world. They had not forgotten. Years ago, after disappearing from her corner of the city, the triplets had been taken in by a charitable organization. Someone had noticed them, helped them, given them education and shelter. They had grown up together, refusing to be separated, driven by a promise they never spoke aloud but always carried. They worked relentlessly, studying by day, laboring by night, supporting one another through every failure and triumph. Eventually, they built something extraordinary together, a business born from nothing but grit and loyalty. Success followed, faster than they ever imagined. But no amount of money erased the memory of an old woman who fed them when she had nothing. They searched for her for years. Streets changed, people moved, but they never stopped looking. And now, here they were, standing in front of the woman who had saved them in the simplest, most profound way possible. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the men knelt before her, not in performance, not for attention, but because gratitude had weight, and they were carrying all of it. Shanti wept openly, her tears soaking into her shawl, her frail hands resting on heads that had once been hungry and afraid. That day, they did not give her money and disappear. They stayed. They listened. They learned about her life, her losses, her quiet endurance. In the weeks that followed, they transformed her world with the same care she had once shown them. They rebuilt her stall into a proper shop, ensured she would never worry about food again, and, more importantly, made her part of their lives. She was no longer invisible. She was family. Yet the greatest gift was not the comfort or security, it was the knowledge that her kindness had mattered. That one small act, done without expectation, had rippled across time and changed lives beyond measure. Before this story ends, take a moment to comment and share what kindness means to you. Your words might inspire someone who feels invisible today. Now, if this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that even the smallest act can echo for years, please like this video, share it, and subscribe to Acts That Matter. Your engagement helps keep these stories alive, and kindness moving forward. The transformation of Shanti's life did not arrive like a sudden miracle that erased the past, it unfolded slowly, tenderly, as if even fate knew her heart needed time to trust happiness. In the days after the Lamborghinis left, she would often sit alone inside her newly repaired shop, running her fingers along the smooth counter, half expecting everything to vanish like a dream at dawn. For decades, life had taught her that good things were temporary visitors, never permanent residents. Yet this time, the mornings kept coming with warmth instead of dread. Fresh supplies arrived without her counting coins. Her body, once bent under exhaustion, began to rest. And most of all, the silence that had wrapped around her life for years was gently replaced by presence. The 3 men returned often, not as benefactors showing charity, but as sons returning to a place where their story had once been stitched back together. They sat near her shop, watching her work, listening to her memories, absorbing every detail of the woman who had shaped their destiny without ever knowing it. As weeks passed, Shanti's small corner of the road became something entirely new. People came not just for food, but for the story. They came to see the old woman whose kindness had echoed across time, whose fragile hands had once fed 3 starving children who now stood as symbols of hope. But Shanti never allowed the attention to change her. She still cooked the same simple meals, still wiped tables with the same care, still gave extra food to anyone who looked too hungry to ask. Wealth had touched her life, but it had not rewritten her soul. And that was what moved the triplets most. They had traveled the world, seen luxury and power, but nowhere had they found a richness as pure as the heart that beat inside this frail woman. Yet the past had not left Shanti untouched. At night, when the shop lights dimmed and the road grew quiet, memories returned. She remembered the years of loneliness, the nights she cried herself to sleep, the countless times she had chosen to give instead of keep, even when it hurt. She wondered how many other small acts had gone unseen, how many kind people had lived and died without ever knowing the impact of their goodness. These thoughts no longer filled her with sorrow, but with a deep, aching gratitude. She understood now that kindness was never wasted. It only waited. The triplets, too, carried their own silent struggles. Success had not erased the scars of abandonment or hunger. There were moments when loud noises still startled them, when the memory of sleeping hungry on cold streets tightened their chests. Standing beside Shanti grounded them. Her presence reminded them why they had worked so hard, why they had refused to become cruel in a world that once showed them none. They ensured her future was secure, but more importantly, they ensured she would never feel forgotten again. They involved her in decisions, celebrated small moments with her, and treated her wisdom as something priceless. In her laughter, they found healing. In her blessings, they found peace. Over time, Shanti became a quiet symbol in the community. Parents told their children her story. Strangers left notes of thanks. Some came seeking advice, others simply to sit in her presence for a moment of calm. And through it all, Shanti remained the same woman who had once stirred lentils with shaking hands, choosing compassion over fear. She never spoke of destiny or reward. She only said that when you feed the hungry, you feed something inside yourself as well. As the years continued, her hair turned completely white, her steps slower, but her eyes shone brighter than ever. She watched the triplets grow into leaders who used their success to lift others, creating shelters, education programs, and opportunities for children who reminded them of who they once were. Each life they touched felt like a continuation of the meal she had served long ago, a chain of kindness stretching further than she could ever imagine. And so, the road where 3 Lamborghinis once stopped returned to its ordinary rhythm, but it was no longer the same. Something invisible yet powerful lingered in the air, a reminder that the smallest acts, done quietly and without expectation, can one day come roaring back, not as repayment, but as proof that humanity still remembers how to love.